Come on. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Mac and Jack Sports Show, streaming live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch, 8 to 10 a.m., Wednesday through Sunday, with our platforms also on Instagram and Twitter. Like, comment, share, and subscribe when possible. Check out our great website, macandjacksports.com, and check out the name of the website, is Max Sports Insiders, for information on all our insiders, such as the guests we have on today, articles, teams, public relations updates, and other great sponsor links. And check out those links for their products and services. I'm Mac with your co-host, Jack Hirsch, legendary boxing writer and former president of the Boxing Writers Association. We're bringing you national sports with special focus on Northeast professional sports from New York, Boston, and Philly. And I'd like to welcome our guest, as he's here normally every Saturday, Dr. Paul Semendinger from the popular Yankees blog, starts spreading the news. He's also a author, winning a bunch of awards for his book, Scattering the Ashes. So how you doing today, guys?
You're doing great. Thank you. Welcome.
Good, Mac. Good, excellent. So we're going to get through some quick sports updates, and then we're going to get to some baseball stuff as we do every Saturday. So the COVID guys will not stop the Army-Navy rivalry game. So they're going to be playing no matter COVID or no COVID. And I'm glad about that, guys, because I really love watching that game and the tradition and the rivalry that's been going on for so long.
Listen, I know in the late 1970s, I traveled to Philadelphia to see one of those games live. And even though neither team is ever competing for a national title, it's a fun game. It's always a fun game.
Yeah, I love the offenses they run. Sometimes they go up there when they play some of the big schools. They give them fits because of that triple option they run. And it's really interesting to see, them going up there and playing the Alabamas, the Notre Dames and stuff like that. And once in a while they pull out a victory. It depends how good that big team is at that time. So Jerry Jones criticizes himself as the GM, saying maybe they should get a new GM. But, of course, he said, I can't fire myself. He also added, as he always does, maybe they shouldn't have run the 4-3 defense this year. Again, getting involved in some coaching situations. But here's Jerry Jones at least coming out and kind of with some, some self-criticism, Jack.
He can fire himself as the GM. He's still the owner. No one's telling him he can't be the owner. Just fire yourself as the GM, hire someone else, and of course, he'll hire someone else who he can have say over. So, and it'll look good. It'll look good as far as the PR's involved.
Did you know, Doc, that Jerry Jones, during the George Steinbrenner era there, when he was running the team, was the person who was distributing all the vending products as far as food and stuff goes? That's how he got. So one of the reasons why he got so healthy, so wealthy, and I guess healthy too. So he was actually the main person that was in charge of the vending, and he said he learned a lot from George Steinbrenner.
That could tell you something. Since when this football thing about George Steinbrenner being this great football guy, and he hired his coach Lou Saban and all, and George Steinbrenner, this Doc could tell you, used all these football rah-rah talks as motivation. I mean, you think, Doc, they work in baseball, these motivation, speeches?
They work when they work, right? When the player goes in the locker room or the coach yells at the team and then they go out and they win 8 out of 10, everybody says it was the speech. When the person does that and they lose 8 out of 10, they just sort of forget about it.
Very true. Very true. Of course, the Carson Wentz is a big story in Philadelphia. Both Ron Jaworski, the former quarterback, and Boomer Esiason came out, and they've chimed in. Jaworski saying that's the worst fall off he's ever seen, and Boomer saying that he may need psychiatric help.
You're unbelievable, Doc. This is one of our debate topics, and you're starting the race before the race officially has begun. Come on,
right?
You're supposed to talk about this later on.
No, this is our sports update we do every day, Jack, and that was in the news. So,
but Carson Wentz, sorry you're a little tired of Carson Wentz by now. All this Carson Wentz talk, it's going on and on and on. Leave the poor guy alone. He got benched. Leave him alone.
It's very interesting how someone who had so much success projected for him, and all of a sudden has fallen off so bad. He signed that multi-million-dollar contract, was going to be the franchise quarterback, and let me see if I can think of a good example. Sort of like Soriano with the Yankees, the second baseman had all this stuff going for him, and all of a sudden he couldn't find first base. It's similar to Chuck Knobloch, also a great fielder. All of a sudden he can't throw to first base. And, that's pretty interesting to me, Jack.
I want to ask Doc this too, Mac, and you as well. Did Soriano really fall off that badly? They traded him for A-Rod, and then he went to the Cubs later on.
To play left field.
Right.
Did he have that bad of a fall off?
I don't recall that.
I don't recall it being that terrible. Chuck Knobloch, we know all of a sudden had problems in the field. Yeah.
The reason why Soriano got moved to the outfield was because of that problem where all of a sudden he couldn't find first base again. And they were talking the comparison to what happened to Knobloch. So here's a guy that's a very good infielder, like Wentz was supposed to be a very good quarterback. All of a sudden, just for some reason or another, they're having a problem just throwing the ball to first base as he's having a problem being quarterback right now. So
when I think of throwing problems, I can't help but think of Steve Blass, who won 2 games in the 1971 World Series for the Pittsburgh Pirates when they beat the Orioles. Even though Roberto Clemente got the MVP award, Earl Weaver felt Steve Blass was the real MVP of that series. But then Steve Blass all of a sudden couldn't find the strike zone.
Yeah.
Remember the Mets had a catcher too, Mackie Sasser. Mackie was having problems throwing, and remember he couldn't even really get the ball back to the pitcher for a while.
Oh.
It was I think for a while they called that Steve Blass disease, right?
Yeah. How come we don't see more of that? It astonishes me, the accuracy. A man's on third, and the catcher's always throwing the ball to the pitcher, and you never see the ball thrown away or the ball go off the pitcher's glove. That should give you an idea about how good big leaguers really are.
Yeah, I mean, listen, we were talking before the show, and not everybody can play baseball, no matter what kind of athlete you are in other sports. Some like Deion Sanders and Bo Jackson just did really well playing 2 sports. But then you had somebody like Michael Jordan, who was probably one of the best athletes in basketball history. And then you have Tim Tebow, who was one of the greatest college players of all time. They try to go and play baseball. They're not having such.
Well, I got to point out, Michael Jordan's minor league manager was Terry Francona. And Terry Francona feels Michael Jordan would have legitimately made the big leagues if he had about 1,500 more at-bats. Now, that's an awful lot. Yeah. That's like 3 seasons worth, or maybe he didn't say 1,500. Maybe my memory's failing me there. But he felt he needed a couple of more years. But he was on track, okay, to be a legitimate big leaguer. And Michael Jordan could really run. You got to keep that in mind. So that has a lot of value also. I'm not saying he would have been a good big leaguer, but maybe good enough to get up there. Maybe play for the Baltimore Orioles. Okay, how do you like that?
Possibly. I mean, I don't know. I did watch him play when he first, they had him on TV at the minor league level, and he looked pretty awkward up there at the plate, Jack. Johnny Bench, the great Cincinnati catcher, arguably one of the greatest catchers of all time, decided to sell off his memorabilia to get funds to, I think it's his grandchildren he wanted to send to college. And his friend ended up buying his memorabilia for $1 million and turned around and gave Johnny Bench all his memorabilia back.
That's
Wow.
great.
What a
That
story.
guy, we should get his name and praise him and give him an honorary award. Something like that was done once before with the former world heavyweight champion Vladimir Klitschko to raise money for his foundation. He sold off his Olympic gold medal. He auctioned off his Olympic gold medal, and someone bought it and gave the medal back to Klitschko. I mean, those people who make that type of gesture, I mean, it's so kind and wonderful. Words can't, describe how good it is.
Yeah, I brought Johnny Bench to tears, so that was pretty impressive.
But Johnny can't sell it again. He has to know he's got to keep it now. Okay, if he sold it off again, we'd be annoyed at Johnny Bench.
I would agree with that. And I want to get this in real quick. I seen this on it's gone viral, so I couldn't bring up the video. I wanted to show it. And this is about youth sports and coaches. And this is not baseball, but I've seen it in baseball too, where the coach gets so involved in a game that he ends up actually striking the players, the young kids. This one coach down, I think it was in Florida, he looked like an 8 or 9 year old kid. Didn't do what he was saying. He actually pushed him and hit him in the back of the head, knocking him to the ground, and turned to the fans and started yelling at the fans. This coach was fired. I think this coach should be arrested. And, Jack, I started out coaching the youth football and baseball, especially football. And any coach, if I ever saw that, I would maybe end up in jail that day, because I would be so upset that if you are to do something like that to a kid, hit him and knock him down, and he gets back up, and then you hit him again, I would have an issue. I would really get fired up.
Let me tell you, sometimes you wonder how adults could get carried away. Let me tell you a little story when I was coaching JV baseball, okay? And Doc, knowing obviously about the field of education, can have a feeling on this. One of my batters hits a home run. The next batter gets hit in the back with the next pitch. Now, I was a bit naive. I'd never crossed my mind that a coach of JV baseball, and I know the other coach was a flake by his personality, would have ordered something like that. Later on, the season's over, and I see some of the players on my team. I bump into them, and we start talking. And somehow that game comes up, and it clicks in my head. You think that coach threw at so-and-so? I can't name the names. And they said, of course he did. And it never entered my mind an adult on that level, you're talking about 9th and 10th graders, would go so far as to have his pitcher deliberately throw at the batter. Now, I was naive, and it just never crossed my mind, adults would do that. It's just a game. And what happens, you see these adults in the stands during games, they get carried away, they start cursing at the refs, they want to come at the refs. I've been asked on the spur of the moment to officiate basketball games, okay, at these youth organizations. And I officiated a game once, and some fans are yelling in the stands, and they just plucked me out at the last moment.
Yeah.
And I felt like stopping the game and giving a talk to all the people, that I didn't have to subject myself to that. And some of these adults get carried away. Now, the guy who did that to the kid might be a very good person who just lost it in his competitive drive, got the best of him, and he fell out of touch with reality. So I don't know what the repercussions should be. There have to be repercussions for his actions. What they should be remains to be determined. I don't know the person.
He should be arrested, Jack.
Oh, okay. I'm not arguing. Once again, I'm not discussing penalties, so on. But you have to look at the person's background, check into it thoroughly, and what the heck was going on here. And, when people get in a competition, sometimes they absolutely lose it. I had a high school player, okay, that and I was, this was at boys' clubs. We had, a basketball tournament. He would sometimes lose it over the officiating, start cursing, going crazy. He was a wonderful kid, great student, wonderful kid. I'd have him in the office. We'd have heart-to-heart talks. He'd be working on his problem. We leave the office, the game begins. I make a call, and all of a sudden he yells, "You jerk!" I stopped the game, and I didn't want to even punish him. He left the game. We talked the next day. Sometimes it's these impulse control problems, but what he did with the kid, I mean, it's awful,
Yeah, I mean,
and there's got to
listen,
be repercussions without
yeah,
question.
and yeah, he was fired, but it should go a lot farther than that. So let's get to. I like to post in different groups, or my assistant producer does, and I belong to 3 Yankee groups, and I said this was a question for him. It's Game 7 of the World Series. You have 3 pitchers to choose from to take the mound in history. Who would they be? And I tried to make it a decade thing, or where these different pitchers come from different eras. So the first one was Whitey Ford, the second one was Ron Guidry, and the third one was Andy Pettitte.
Are these fans kidding?
So anyway,
Yeah.
so guess who won that poll, guys?
Those are the 3 you put out.
Yeah,
I think I can guess who won the poll. I think they were wrong.
right.
Andy Pettitte wins.
Barely.
No, out of the 3 of them?
Yes.
You're thinking who the fans would have voted for.
Right.
I mean, it should be Whitey Ford.
Right.
Correct.
Right. So I mean, you could argue Ron Guidry in that 178 year when he went.
That
was
1 year, yeah.
25-3. Yeah.
25-3. I mean, you could argue if that was his year that maybe he could be involved in that, but it was Andy Pettitte edging out Whitey Ford. It was very interesting. Of course, they say in big games he was big, but I mean,
I have an interesting question for Doc. Very interesting question. Now, when the Yankees last year signed Garrett Cole to the 9-year contract, obviously they were looking for an ace. If you could cut a deal that for the next 9 years you get a young Andy Pettitte, and Garrett Cole's going to perform like Andy Pettitte, would you have signed him on that thing? That's very interesting, because you're not quite getting your ace that you're signing Garrett Cole for, but you're getting a heck of a good pitcher who's going to be consistently good year in, year out. That's very interesting, I think. At that amount of money, if you were guaranteed to have an Andy Pettitte performance for 9 years?
I think that's a great question, because it's so multi-layered. In the end, Andy Pettitte's a borderline Hall of Famer. So Garrett Cole right now, that's what he hopes to be at the end. But the Yankees aren't paying for, a guy to win 15 or 18 games, and then 14 and then 16. They're hoping that Garrett Cole is a 20-game winner year after year for a number of years yet. That being said, they gave him a 10-year deal, and he's going to be pitching into his late 30s. And Andy Pettitte was great through his, or at least very good through his mid-30s. And he's through 200 some odd innings every year. So I think in the end, if the Yankees get Andy Pettitte performance out of Garrett Cole, they'll probably be happy in the end.
Yeah, is he really a borderline Hall of Famer, Mac? Do you think Andy Pettitte? I don't look at him quite as a borderline Hall of Famer.
I do, because of what he did in the biggest games, and that's why. I mean, if you think about what he's done during that run, I mean, as far as consistently a 20-game winner, no, but very close. And in the biggest games, he came up used, Jack. I mean, he was something else when it came to the playoffs.
I wouldn't say he wasn't lights out as a playoff pitcher. I mean, he was consistent, I think, which is all you can ask for. You match your performance to the regular season, and Andy Pettitte did that in the playoffs, the way Derek Jeter did. So
I don't know. I know, and I think Doc would agree with me that he never really folded like some big pitchers did. I mean, even if you look at some of the greatest pitchers in history, when they got to the big games, they couldn't live up to that. There's a few today that are like that. Andy Pettitte was almost, I would say, not guaranteed, but pretty close to guaranteed when he pitched in the playoffs.
It's interesting. I wrote last year, I always do a series on the blog about, what the Hall of Fame ballot, and I look at all their numbers. And last year I said he was close, but he fell short. And this year I really looked deeper into the numbers, and I made the argument that Andy Pettitte would get my vote for the Hall of Fame. I think there's a discussion there about when you get a certain amount of votes, like if they give you 10 votes or 12 votes and you look at the ballot and it's a stacked ballot, a good guy might not get a vote. And if it's a weak ballot, a lesser guy could get in. I mean, there's a discussion there for another time. But today, I think it's at 1:00. We're going to have an article from another writer on our staff, Lincoln Mitchell, who makes the argument that Andy Pettitte does not belong in the Hall of Fame. And he points out the games when he pitched in the playoffs when he didn't do as well. I picked out the idea that he won 19 postseason games, which is by far more than any pitcher in history. And that he was a very consistent pitcher for a long, long time. And he gave the Yankees a lot of innings and a lot of big games. So I think he's borderline. I think if he gets in someday, it'll be because he got in by an eyelash. And if he doesn't make it in, I think he's going to be one of those guys like Tommy John who just sits there right on the edge. And there's a guy on ESPN who also wrote an article saying that Andy Pettitte is one of the very few guys who was born in the 1970s, who comes in this period of time after the big name guys and before some of the other guys. And he sort of bridges the gap between the way pitchers were used. And he was the best of the pitchers in that era. So there's a lot of arguments there either way.
So, it's a good point. It's a good point both ways. He may not be a guarantee. You think of World Series, of Hall of Fame pitchers, of course, you think of Whitey Ford and what he did. But I'm telling you, Andy Pettitte, to me, the games I watched, he was very consistent. And again, he won a lot of postseason games. And, of course, that's a lot has to do with because the Yankees were in a lot of postseason
given
games.
the opportunity.
Right. So that's something else that, maybe could be debated farther between me and Jack and later on.
Well, you know what bothers me about the Hall of Fame in general? They don't consider body of work. Like, I'd love to see Don Mattingly get in ahead of Andy Pettitte. I think Don Mattingly's a Hall of Famer, but they point to the longevity of his career. The only one they give a pass to who really hasn't had longevity, and maybe there's someone else I haven't thought of, is Sandy Koufax, because he was so great for the period of time, that he pitched. But Don Mattingly's body of work as a manager should be included. And was he a great manager? No. He won, I think, 3 division titles with the Dodgers, but he's managed longer with the Marlins than any other manager in their history. So if you think of that, he was manager of the year this year. So if you add that layer on top of him being a player, I think he should get in.
So, folks, not to cut Jack off, but we have a limited time with the doc today, and I want to get a couple of things in. So, we have a trivia question. It is a Yankees trivia question for 2 of the best historians, I think, in baseball today, both Doc and Dr. Semendinger and Jack. So, the trivia question, and it's a Yankee trivia question, which manager was nicknamed the midget manager of the Yankees?
I have my guess.
You go first, because all I'm doing is guessing. Okay.
I would say Miller Huggins.
Miller Higgins?
Miller Huggins, yep.
How about you, Jack?
That's a good one. Yeah, no. I'm going to switch over based on Doc's, because I was going to say, having no idea. Miller Huggins, I remember, was a short guy, but I didn't think of him off the bat. I was originally quickly going to say Joe McCarthy, but Miller Huggins, right, a short guy. Babe Ruth was really fond of him. I would have to switch over based on Doc's answer to Doc's way of thinking. Yes, I'm gonna ride Doc's coattails. I'm glad I wasn't out there alone on this.
Now the question is, are we right? Are you riding the correct coattails? We might be wrong. I don't know.
Yeah.
Well, Huggins was only 5'1" to 5'2".
Right. That's why I swithed over from McCarthy.
Don't
tell me it was McCarthy.
You both are correct. So
I went Miller Huggins. I went Miller Huggins. I copied him. Yeah.
Yes, you did. So Miller Huggins was only 5'1", 5'2", but quickly gained the respect. The owner loved him, but quickly gained the respect of all the Yankees because he was so organized in the way he approached baseball. So
I didn't realize he was that short. What was his height again?
5'1" to 5'2", Jack.
Well, I didn't realize he was quite that short.
Yes, he was a real I had a photo of him standing next to one of the players, and it was, I can imagine him getting mad at you and kind of yelling at you. And
Well-respected manager, though. Well-respected.
Yes, he definitely was.
Young.
What's that?
He died young.
Yes, he did. Yes, he did.
I think he died during the. I'm just no research here. 1929. I think he died during the season.
Could it have been the stock market crash? That.
And the Yankees, I think, went to Bob Shawkey. I'm going to look him up right now.
Yeah. Okay. So while Doc is doing that, I did a Mets poll. Same question. World Series game 7, and the pitchers I gave them to consider was Tom Seaver. I didn't pick the other one. His name is just flown out of my mind. But I put Seaver, DeGrom, and Doc Gooden. And with the fans today, what do you think their choice was, guys?
Wow, that you have a lot. You know what it is, and I think Doc would agree with me on this, Mac. I think most people who answer these polls are younger fans.
Right.
The older fans, I think, would be conservative, go for Tom Seaver. I'm not sure how much the younger fans relate to Doc Gooden. At Doc Gooden's very best, who is better than him at its very best. And Jacob deGrom, is looking, the last 3 years, has been one of the greatest pitchers of all time, the last 3 years. So young fans, the Mets don't have, no disrespect to them, they're not that popular right now. No disrespect. I don't mean it quite that way. With what would fans be thinking? I got the feeling they'll go for the glamour guy, Doc Gooden.
I think the fans on this one picked Seaver. And the reason I'm thinking that, because Tom Seaver just died. And I think like Jack was saying, a lot of this is what they hear in the news, and you hear a lot about DeGrom, and that would have been my pick. But maybe over the last number of weeks, they've heard enough about Seaver that he actually came back into the forefront. That's my guess.
Yes, well, you're correct, Doc. Seaver trounced both DeGrom and Gooden. 4 times the vote, 5 times the vote of DeGrom, who was in second, and just destroyed Gooden. So they're I would agree with that because Seaver did it in the World Series, and Gooden, as you said, in his best, Jack was great too. In '86,
I got to tell you, in the '69 World Series, the Mets beat the Orioles 4-1. In Game 1, Seaver was the losing pitcher. They lost that game 4-1, and then he came back in the the 4th game, and they won 2-1. I think in maybe extra. Was that 9 or 10 innings? The ball hit J.C. Martin running down the first baseline. Seaver pitched well in that game, but he's had kind of like mixed results. Even he lost a close playoff game in '73 to the Reds, but then he won Game 5. McGraw came in relief. So he's been good, but he wasn't always lights out in the playoffs. When you're talking about Andy Pettitte before, now they were on the Mets. The Mets version of Andy Pettitte, who hasn't been given enough credit, was Jerry Koosman. He was to the Mets what Andy Pettitte was to the Yankees. And we were just talking '69 World Series. It was Koosman who won 2 games. Don Clendenin got the MVP of that series because he hit 3 big home runs. But in the way you think, why didn't Koosman get it? The Mets are down 1-0, and Koosman wins Game 2 by a 2-1 score. As I recall, he had a complete game. As I recall, I might be wrong. Then Game 5, in which they clinched, Koosman was the winning pitcher. They won 5-3. So when a guy wins 2 games and pitches that well, how does he not get the World Series MVP?
I was going to put that. My original thought was to put Koosman in there, but I wanted to span the generations because I think Koosman would have been a heck. I think he would have gave Seaver a run for his money, but I just wanted to, span the generations. Gooden when the Mets were good in the '80s, and DeGrom now being a multiple.
How certain pitchers, it depends on their circumstance. Someone asked Doc Mel Stottlemyre. very underrated because he pitched for losing teams. Who would you put Mel Stottlemyre on a par with today? Was he as good as Andy Pettitte? Was he
Oh,
better
he
than
might have been
Andy
as good as
Pettitte?
Andy Pettitte. He won 20 games a number of times, pitching for really bad Yankee teams. And I think he got hurt at the very end there, just before the Yankees were coming back to being good. Let me just go back to Miller Huggins. He died in 1929. It was during the season, and then I think he was a coach. Art Fletcher managed the final 11 games, and then in 1930, former Yankee pitcher Bob Shawkey managed them to a third place finish, and then in 32 is when they got Joe McCarthy.
Right.
Oh, cool.
So it is our half hour is up with the doc. We, again, appreciate him coming in every week. He's a great guest, and he's great for the show. And check out Scattering the Ashes if you can. A great book, award-winning, and definitely check out Start Spreading the News if you're a Yankee fan or just a baseball fan. I mean, the articles there are great and very in-depth, and they have a lot of things going on over there all the time. So, Doc, I want to thank you for coming in, and enjoy your day off.
You too?
Right.
I don't know if there is ever any days off anymore, but it's all good.
That's right. Exactly.
If you love what you do, you never work a day in your life, right?
That's great. That's a great thought. And that, if you do love what you do, yeah, you're not really working, I guess. Right. So,
Absolutely.
Doc, again, you have a great
week.
day.
I'll see you next Saturday. Thank you.
You too. So, folks, that was Dr. Paul Semendinger, one of my favorite guests. Knows a lot about Major League Baseball history, is an expert, in my opinion, on the Yankees, and especially in their history. He gives a lot of thought. He gives a lot of insight, and we're lucky to have him on every week. So, again, thanks to Dr. Paul Semendinger. As you see, Jack has quit the show all of a sudden now. He'll be back in. He's got some things he's got to take care of. So I want to get back into what I was talking about before Jack comes on and we get back into our debate. And that's what happened, I think it was in Florida, on a youth football team. And me being a coach in youth football, there's certain ways you can handle coaching younger kids. Some coaches still do get upset. They may ride them a little bit, maybe embarrass them during practice. They may challenge them. I always found that the best kind of relationship I had with my players, whether it was youth or up into high school or even into higher levels, was one-on-one. If I had a problem, if there was an attitude problem, if I didn't think they were trying hard enough, not that I didn't razz them a little bit during practice, but if it was a problem that I think needed addressing, I would pull them to the side, not in front of the team, and I would talk to them very, very firmly and try to find out what was going on. And when you do coach these young kids, you got to understand that they're not, the same. The same kids are not the same, right? They're the same age, they have the same interests, but they come from different families, they come from different cultures, and you've got to find out, and they do this, successful coaches do this even up into the pros, you got to find out what makes them tick, right? You got to find out what motivates them, or do you pat them on the back? Do you got to kind of jab them a little bit? Do you got to kind of be a little harder than you do the other kids? You have kids that have, come from single parent families, whether it's a single mother or a single father, and they don't have the same kind of upbringing than other kids do. And when you're coaching, you got to realize that, because you're not there just to win. Winning, I think, is important because you've got to have goals and you got to compete, and that's a very important lesson. But they're there to learn. They're there to have some kind of mentoring, some kind, maybe a father figure. Maybe they're looking for a bigger brother. Maybe they're just looking to be part of a family. And when you take over as coach, and if anybody out there that follows here, decides to go ahead and volunteer their time to coaching youth football or youth baseball or whatever sport it is, it really doesn't matter. Keep in mind that you're not there just to win the game. The wins will come once the team starts working together as a unit, and once you find the buttons to push. And I'll tell you, the best results I ever had was to take the child to the side and talk to them one-on-one, not embarrassing them in front of the team. Sometimes that does work. But most of the times it's either or. It either puts them farther in a shell, or maybe it does work. but that's the best way. Remember, you're there to teach the kids about winning, about losing, believe it or not, how to handle the lose, what you learn from losing, how to compete as a unit, or even if it's boxing or something like that, how to compete, period, and become even a good winner, not just a good loser, because that's what life is about. When you go out there in the real world, it's all about competing. It's all about trying and getting knocked down and getting back up again, and trying to get your life straight. So when somebody like that does that to a child on their team, as I said, if I was there, I might be going to jail, because I would have been all up in that man's face, and that was totally wrong. And that man not only should have been fired, but should be arrested. And on a side note with that, when you're there as a fan and your child is playing sports, I know you get upset, and a lot of parents do try to live through their children. They want their children to be good at what they do. Some put them on traveling soccer teams and baseball teams, and they're trying to maybe get their child ahead of the other ones, and maybe they think their child has a future in playing a sport. Just remember, it's a sport. It's not, they're not making a living yet. If the coach blows the call, if the umpire blows the call, if a ref blows a call, remember, they're getting paid less than minimum wage. They're going out there and they're trying to be there so the kids can continue to play. They're not there to pick on your child. They're not there to embarrass your child, and they're not there to try to make your team lose. So please, have a little patience with them. Understand that most of these are volunteers. The ones that do get paid are getting paid very little. So keep that in mind when all this COVID eventually leaves, and that you decide to put your child into youth sports or high school sports or whatever it is. So with Jack being out right now, I want to talk a little bit about the Yankee pitch and poll that we put up. Now, Andy Pettit, as me, the doctor, and Jack talked about, was a very good post-game pitcher, in my opinion, anyway. He did keep the Yankees in a lot of games, even if he didn't get to win. Of course, Whitey Ford is a legend. But, let's talk a little bit about Louisiana Lightning Ron Guidry. Ron Guidry, when he came up, he was all of 5'8", about 160 pounds at the most. When he arrived on the scene, you could tell this man was magic. He had that one magic year when he was 25-3, one of the best pitching performances as far as ratios go, wins to losses. He had a explosive fastball that got up near 98 miles an hour. And if any of you remember, Sparky Lyle was a reliever back then, along with Goose Gossage when Sparky Lyle was in. Sparky Lyle had a slider that was unbelievable, and that was his main pitch. And Ron Guidry just basically had a fastball. So he learned to pitch that slider from Sparky Lyle, which made him almost unhittable. When he came inside with that 96, 98 mile an hour fastball, and all of a sudden hit you with that slider, it was unhittable. I went to watch him play one game against the Boston Red Sox. He was dynamite. He was pitching against Louis Tiant. A lot of you fans out there that are older will remember Louis Tiant and that crazy windup he had. And he was a very, very, very good pitcher for the Boston Red Sox. And he was, you couldn't see the ball when he threw it. The Yankees ended up winning that game. I think it was 5-3. Mickey Rivers hit a home run. Craig Nettles hit a 3-run home run. And Butch Hobson for the Red Sox got a hold of one of those Guidry fastballs and dumped it into the left field seats. So I was there when that one year when Ron Guidry had that magical year and watched him pitch in person, and it was really crazy. So I want to talk a little bit about, and hopefully Jack gets back on so we can debate this. In baseball, it seems like we're kind of getting into the instant replay as far as the home runs go. And there's something called the virtual strike zone, right? Where you can watch where the pitch is pitched, whether it's on the outside corner across the plate. And the strike zone is supposed to be from the chest to the knees, as we all know. That is supposed to be the universal strike zone when you're pitching. What we come to find out is that different umpires have different strike zones. You'll hear a broadcaster or managers talking about the umpire on duty for that game where he has a low strike zone. Now, I really still don't know what that means. Is it from the waist to the knees? Well, what the virtual strike zone does is it opens up the plate to the pitcher and gives the batter an idea where a strike is. For you to call a strike a ball that's across the chest or across the stomach when that's the strike zone, it's just crazy. This gives the ump power over a game where he shouldn't have that power. Everybody should have the same strike zone, and sadly, we don't. We have a guy that will call up to the chest. Then you go to the next game, and the guy's calling it, just from the thigh to the knee, and this makes it almost impossible for a pitcher who uses control. I know you all remember the Atlanta Braves pitching staff of the 90s when they had control pitchers and they nibbled at the corners, they nibbled at the knees, and when they did come up, they come up with a high fastball. And normally it was across the chest because these Glavine, and the other pitchers that were on that staff were control pitchers, basically. And that's what made them so good. But now what we have is you have to be a power pitcher today because the strike zone has got increasingly smaller as the decades have gone on, and I can't understand that. I mean, a strike zone is a strike zone. We all know, again, it's from the chest to the knees and on the outside part of the plate. So to give the umpire that amount of control where he can call his own strike zone, I don't get it. I don't understand. So what I'm proposing is that the major leagues go to that virtual strike zone. Now, a lot of people say, you're taking the human element out of it. You're giving away tradition. Well, we already have done that, haven't we? We now have video of whether it's a home run or not. So we've already taken the human factor out of it, right? So you can challenge the home run. But what's more significant, the pitching, the strike zone, or giving up a home run, or whether it's a double or not? I know it's the strike zone. I mean, how can you say, okay, we're going to overturn a decision, or you could challenge a decision on a home run, but you can't challenge a ball or a strike? And the umpires union, I know, would be totally against this, and I know they're pretty powerful. I mean, when they went on strike and they called up the reserve umps, of course, the game was hurt because of that. But again, how do you not want to make the game better? Better for the pitchers, of course, because now they can actually work the zone, but also for the batters. Confused that one time it's a strike, the next time it's not. Or one time it's a ball, and the next time it's not a ball. That's nothing but confusing to the batters. And it, to me anyway, it gives baseball where the best team may not win that game because of an umpire. Heck, they even overturned the tags on the bases, whether he's out or he's safe. That's up for debate, or that's up for, to look at, but not the strike zone. To me, that's crazy. So what we're going to do, folks, we're going to take our first break of the show as our official timeout. We'll be right back after these messages, so stick with us.
If you served honorably in our nation's armed forces and you're looking for a way to continue serving your fellow veterans in your community, then join AMVETS. Each year, AMVETS members volunteer millions of hours at VA healthcare facilities from coast to coast, helping to improve the lives of their fellow veterans through the VA Voluntary Services Program. AMVETS posts and departments also participate in a wide variety of community service projects, ranging from Americanism in our schools to supporting the Special Olympics and Boy Scouts of America. If you no longer wear the uniform today, you can still serve through the AMVETS by joining today at amvets.org.
Hi, Grandma. What's for dinner?
Hey, honey, I'm making stew tonight.
Ooh, can Nina come over?
I'm not sure about our new friend. I wonder if there's been any drinking going on. Alcohol at her age can lead to so many bad things. I've been meaning to ask you, what would happen if someone offered you a drink?
Grandma?
This is hard. She's so young, but I know I need to talk to her about it now before someone tries to give her alcohol. If anyone ever does offer you a drink, I want you to say no. I have too much respect for my family, and I don't want to get in trouble.
Okay.
Really?
I promise, Grandma. I love you too.
Okay, how about tasting this stew and telling me what you think?
Some children may try alcohol as young as 9 years old. It's not too early to talk about drinking. For tips on how to begin the conversation, visit underagedrinking.samhsa.gov. That's underagedrinking.samhsa.gov. This message brought to you by SAMHSA and this station.
When you hear the word asthma, you probably think of shortness of breath, coughing, or inhalers. Lots of things can trigger asthma, but the fact is that asthma doesn't just attack, it can kill. But with proper medical management, asthma is controllable. If you experience shortness of breath, wheezing, tightness in your chest, or persistent nighttime coughing, you may have asthma. See your doctor and get the facts. You'll breathe easier. For more information, call 211 Info Line. A message from the Connecticut Department of Public Health, keeping Connecticut healthy.
We all make choices. When it comes to alcohol, kids make choices whether to drink or not.
Bye-bye.
Remember, I'm going to Alex's party tonight and sleeping over.
Hey, have a seat for a second. Remind me about that party again?
Alex is just
And adults make choices whether to talk about it. That's true of parents and every other trusted adult in a kid's life. Kids want to know our expectations when it comes to alcohol and other drugs. They want guidance and honest answers to their questions. And it makes a difference when the message is consistent and part of everyday conversations. So talk with your kids and help lead them on a positive path. Because when you talk, they hear you. For more information about talking with your kids about underage use of alcohol and other drugs, visit underagedrinking.samhsa.gov.
If you talk and they will hear you every single time.
Oh, we're getting killed.
Yeah, well, Kyle's not here.
How come?
Kicked off the team. Didn't Tim tell you? Kyle and some other kids got caught drinking beer in the park a couple of nights ago.
Really?
Yeah, 0 tolerance. He's out for the season.
Come on, it's a first offense, right?
That we know of. But why should that matter? He knew not to drink. I made it clear to Matt, that's what we expect from him. What have you said to Tim?
Nothing really. You know, a lot of kids try it at this age, so.
Yeah, well, a lot of kids don't try it too. I'm not saying that Matt's going to be this perfect kid, but if I don't tell him what we expect and why he shouldn't drink, how's he going to know?
You see kids that age really look.
They never admit it, though. But they hear more than you think.
Talk. They hear you. For more information about talking with kids about underage drinking, visit underagedrinking.samhsa.gov.
Try.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome back to the Mac and Jack Sports Show. Jack is now back with us, and I had my first debate with myself ever, which was pretty cool, Jack. I wish.
Well,
you
Mac, I'm having a whole security system put in here, so I might have to come and go this show. I warned you about this for
Yes,
like
you
a couple
did. Yes,
of
you
weeks,
did.
and
But
it's
I just
the
wanted
guys
to.
come, they're good. The workers coming, so on, but hopefully I could last the distance here. But I might have to, come and go on the spur of the moment. And
I just wanted to let the new viewers tune it in to find out why I was debating with myself.
I was listening to you, though.
Were you really?
I was listening to you, and you were making some good points. So I think you won that debate by default. You're talking about the virtual strike zone and all.
What do you
and
think
I'm
about?
going to tell you.
What do you think about that, Jack?
I think the virtual strike zone is sometimes inaccurate.
Yeah.
Okay? Just because I love watching it on TV, that after pitch, they show where the ball is. And, the depth perception sometimes could be a little off, whether the ball has hit the corner or not. And who's to determine whether pitch is too low, too high? Traditionally, we've been told what the strike zone is. It has to be, above the knees, and it's just very vague, whatever. My feeling is whenever a pitch is close, the batter should swing on it. If it's a very close pitch, I don't think he has that much of an argument. My feeling on it. It's all open to interpretation. And I'm going to tell you this: if you had the virtual strike zone, you don't think the players would complain about the technology?
I don't know, Jack. I don't know. I think that right now, to pitch in the major leagues, you can't be a nibbler anymore. I mean, you can't. You don't get the whole strike zone anymore. It's determined by the umpire, which to me is more important than whether you overturn a home run or not, because that's the whole game. So with one umpire having a low strike zone and the other one not, I mean, it just, to me, is confusing. I think it would even help the batters out a little bit because, one umpire says that's a strike and the other one says it's a ball.
Well,
So,
I think, Mac, part of it is the batter's reputation. That goes without saying in sports. Greg Nettles was telling a story when he first came up to the major leagues. I don't remember who the umpire is, but the umpire lived near Greg Nettles' town. Okay, so he was talking a little with him while Greg Nettles was batting, and he called him out on strikes. And Greg Nettles thought the third strike wasn't a good pitch, should have been called a ball. But Greg Nettles didn't say a word. Walked right back to the dugout, and the umpire liked that. So from then on in the rest of his career, the umpire gave him slack.
yeah. But see, to me, that might be so, but to me, that's wrong. I mean, it should be universal, So that's the only. I mean, if you're going to use technology, in other ways in baseball,
well,
why
listen, Mac. Bill Veeck, the owner of the Chicago White Sox many moons ago, he was very innovative. He believed in all these gimmicks. So he had a midget player, Eddie Goodell, step up to the plate. And Eddie Goodell, there was very little strike zone, no pun intended, and he walked.
Yes.
So let's say you get the shortest person you can find, just put a bat in his hand, and how much of a strike zone is there going to be there?
Yeah.
I mean, the pitcher's going to have to be perfect to just throw a strike.
Right. Oh, I mean, I understand that, Jack, but I don't think that is an argument against the virtual strike zone. I think that's just an argument on what size the player is. So anyway, so I'm glad I got your thoughts on it anyway. So our first debate, Jack, what I was talking about, of course, I talked about again about coaching the younger players and how, you should understand that the kids are not pros and that they're looking to learn something from you, and hopefully you're there to teach. And if you teach them right, you'll have a successful team. You will win. And it's just a shame when you have people like that, or like you mentioned, fans in the stadium who, or at the park that think their kid is going to be the next Babe Ruth or something, and they get all upset over some calls where these umpires, and a lot of
listen, I just want to go back to that coach that put the hands on the little kid that was a football player, so on. I can't condone that under any circumstance. Don't get me wrong. The parents aren't pressing charges.
Right.
I don't know. Maybe they know the coach and they feel he really is a good person who just did something really terrible. Okay.
Yeah.
Sometimes it gets situations. Good people have terrible moments. Okay.
Yeah.
And that may have been the case here. I don't know. There's got to be penalties.
Yes.
For something like that. But
Jack,
it's a bigger picture. These coaches getting carried away with kids.
Well, the reason why I went to that specific thing wasn't because he just grabbed them. I mean, that would have been. I've seen that happen before, and in fact, one of my coaches did it, and I scolded him for it. And he never did it again, or he would have been gone. But this guy didn't just grab him, Jack. He smacked him in the head with his fist.
Oh, I agree with you. That's got to be. I mean, there's got to be repercussions for actions like that.
And you don't need the parents to press charges, Jack. Somebody else could.
Right. Maybe the penalty should be he's never allowed the rest of his life to be involved with youth coaching. I don't know.
Yeah.
I just don't know. There's got to be penalties. They've got to sit down, put their heads together, see this person's background as well.
Right.
If the person has a violent background, that changes the equation of what the penalty should be.
And Jack, just to give you the full picture, because I don't want to keep going on this, but he not only hit him and grabbed him, he walked away from him yelled in the fans, and then went back to the kid, and that's when he knocked him on the ground.
Oh
So
wow, I didn't know that.
yeah. So this is what I'm saying. I mean, of course he shouldn't coach, but this man shouldn't be walking around the streets. So we're going to do our second debate here, Jack, called the biggest blunder and this would be, I guess, would be maybe in New York history. I mean, it's one of them anyway, and it's the fumble the Giants had. I think it was in 1978, Jack, if I'm not mistaken, where Joe Pisarcik was told by the coach not to take a knee, but to hand it off to Larry Zonka. There was a fumble, and Herm Edwards picked it up and ran for a touchdown. And I'm saying the Jets giving up that TD against the Raiders was probably bigger. So you go ahead and go.
Nothing compares to the 1978 blunder. I don't know why it's called the miracle of the Meadowlands. There was no miracle behind stupidity. Why? I mean, why are you dignifying stupidity by calling it a miracle? Okay, miracles normally associated with something wonderful happening. I mean, this was. This was beyond bad. Okay, I was going to compare it to some other things, but nothing could compare it in sports. It was the epitome of ineptness. All the Giants had to do is get in the victory formation. The victory formation means the quarterback takes the snap from the center and takes a knee, and there's not a thing the defense can do about it. Not a thing they can do about it, because once he takes the snap and takes a knee, he can't fumble. He can't fumble. They can't recover fumble because the play's automatically dead the moment they touch him. But what happened with the Giants? They hand the ball off to Larry Zonka. And the coach, John McVay, later said, it's probably the most secure play we have. Well, that's why he got fired. The Giants were 5-6 at the time. The game was wrapped up. They would have been 6-6, surging for playoff position. Instead, they lose the game. Instead of being 6-6, they're 5-7. They're demoralized. They wound up 6-10 for the year. The funny thing about it, the play before, the Eagles had no timeouts. Joe Pisarcik took a knee.
Right.
But because one of the Eagle players pushed the Giant player into him, they were scared Joe Pisarcik might get hurt. Are they kidding? He plays the whole game. He's involved. They're scared that someone's going to push into him. So Joe Pisarcik is set the hand off to Larry Zonka. Right before the play, Zonka looks at Pisarcik. What are you doing? Call an audible. Don't hand me the ball. And there's confusion between the two. And instead of putting the ball in Zonka's in his hands, he puts it in his hip. The ball bounces up. Herm Edwards returns it for a touchdown. Harry Carson sat frozen for 15 minutes after the game in disbelief. He was with the Giants. He was there for him in his third year. Great things would come for Harry Carson later on. The only thing I could say that good came of that fumble is that it put a new era in motion for the Giants. They would then hire George Young as GM, and George Young would make some great moves that would eventually lead to Bill Parcells down the road, and the Giant culture changed. But you're never going to get a team throw away a game like that. Never in the history of the league. And you're going to talk about the Jets. You could talk all you want about the Jets, but the bottom line is, even had the Jets done the right thing and put a bunch of guys back in the end zone to defend against the long pass, there's always a possibility a ball's going to get batted into the hand of the receiver, and there's always a possibility of a fluke play going on. But with the fumble at the Meadowlands in 1978, come on.
Well, Jack, I mean, and I agree with you. I remember the game. I was, I was in disbelief like everybody else. See, to me, the reason why the Jets, the call for an all-out blitz on the last play of the game is they had the Jets over the past, 10 years have shown that they're really not interested in winning, right? They change coaches all the time. They hire a coach who is a terrible coach at Miami, and this just goes to show one more straw in the hat. Now you are right, McVay got fired, but so did the defensive coordinator of the Jets just get fired, and Adam Gase is right behind him. I guarantee you that. It's not only going to cost the defensive coordinator the job, but it's going to also cost the head coach job, which should not be there right now as it presently is. When he called an all-out blitz and they ran that play and they got that touchdown, even Jim Ryan called the blitz, and he is a defensive coordinator by trade. And of course, he was a head coach for the Jets for a couple championship games. He called it the stupidest call he had ever seen.
Oh, Rex Ryan, yeah.
Rex Ryan, sorry, in his life, leaving the cornerbacks one-on-one with the Raiders' good receivers, and Carr, who was a great quarterback as far as passing the ball, picking up blitzes. He's had an outstanding year this year. That was just out of control. And not only didn't they do an all-out blitz, they had a middle linebacker running around in the middle of the field. I guess he was spying Carr for some reason in case Carr decided to run the ball for a touchdown or pick up a first down. It was the last play of the game, as it was for the Giants on there. But again, the reason why, and you said at the end, Jack, that I believe that this is worse than that fumble was because it turned around the Giants altogether. The NFL actually came tomorrow and said, guess what? We got a GM that you're going to hire. His name is George Young. The NFL actually got involved in it for them to get George Young, who hired Ray Perkins, who hired Bill Parcells, and he also hired Bill Belichick. So within that short time frame, from 78 to 1985, the Giants went to the championship and lost to the Bears. I do not think, Jack, I don't even know if Adam Gase is going to get fired next year. This is just the straw to me that should break every Jets back. This is the one that shows that not only was that a bad call, and the Jets, who had a chance to win the game, even though it was only going to be one game maybe this year, they went ahead. They're scrapping. They're leading at the end of the game, and the defensive coordinator makes a call, and it goes through the head coach's headset, and he agrees with it or lets it go.
Yeah.
What does this do for the Jets' future? Are they going to do something about it? The way it's been, Jack, with that ownership, I don't think so. I don't think that the Jets will bring in a coach that they know can change the culture. I think the Jets will bring in maybe this time a defensive coordinator to run the team instead of an offensive coordinator who was supposed to help out Sam Darnold. The reason why I say this is worse is because this is what shows the Jet fans, hopefully and finally, that they should start revolting, that they should start burning their season tickets like the Giants did, that they should start boycotting the TV games that they show until the Jets get their stuff together, Jack.
Well, I'll tell you the weird part about it, something good came of both blunders. Because as I said before, the Giant culture changed. They eventually got George Young as their GM. Had they won that game, and they would have been 6-6. And chances are, instead of being 6-10, they would have gone about 8-8 on the season, and they would have held serve with John McVay as their coach. Actually, John McVay is the dad of the Ram coach,
Yes.
at the current time. But for the Jets, I mean, if this results in them getting Trevor Lawrence and he turns out to be a great quarterback for the Jets, the loss would have been beneficial in the long run, obviously. But just the idea, the players on the field, they're playing their heart out, and they deserve better, than to have throw away a game like that. But I don't think anything compares to a quarterback just having to take a snap and taking a knee to end the game, and that happening. I mean, The fans didn't leave for a long time in the Meadowlands in that 78 game. They were too shocked to even boo loudly.
Yeah, they were.
I mean, they were too shocked to boo. They were looking at one another. Did we just see this?
Right?
Like the reaction, they were numb.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it was one of the worst calls I've ever seen in my life. I still think the Jets is a little bit better because to me, I mean, the Giants were bad for a long time too, but hopefully the Jet fans take action, and they can, believe it or not. So let's get to the second debate, Jack. And this is, should a manager or a coach rest the players if a playoff appearance is wrapped up? And I'm going to tell you why they shouldn't do this, Jack. Anytime you take the foot off the gas, tell your team that it's okay not to try and win or not to win, you take a chance on sending the wrong message to your team, taking the steam out of your team. Football is just as much a mental game and emotional game, Jack, as it is physical and the players you got in. How do wild cards climb the ladder and get to the Super Bowl? How did the Giants do it? How did the other wild card teams and the losing teams during the year get to the playoffs, the championship, and eventually the Super Bowl? It's because they continue to play, Jack. They continue to strive to win. Now, it has worked in certain circumstances, resting players and getting the Super Bowl. But in some, it hasn't worked, Jack. So, to me, I want to hear what happens. I don't want to hear. Let me put it this way. I don't want to hear what happens if one of the players get hurt. What happens if the quarterback gets hurt? What happens? Blah. That's not the point of the whole season. You know, the quarterback, every time he goes on the field, has a chance to get hurt. He could get hurt in that first playoff game. He could get hurt in the championship. He could get hurt in the Super Bowl. That's what football is.
Are you only talking football or all sports?
Well, let me get to that, Jack. I'm going to football first. Baseball, to me, is the same way. Baseball is all about momentum. You say maybe not because of pitchers. But listen, you take out your starting pitcher, you can get rusty. You sit down a batter that's hitting, has a hitting streak. He might get rusty. He might have a mental block. All of a sudden, the shortstop, who's guaranteed money, all of a sudden he misses a ground ball. When you have a psyche of any team, I don't care if it's hockey, basketball, baseball, football. When you have a psyche of a team, 80% of the game, Jack, is mental and emotional. In any sport, there's a certain amount of execution. And that's why I bring up football, because it's an execution game. Everything has to be in par. But even in basketball, Jack, you got to execute. You got to execute the pick and rolls. You got to execute the screens. In baseball, you gotta have the double play working all the time. Yeah, I mean, this is done by repetition, Jack. This is not something that you go to a blackboard and look up. This is something done by repetition. So to me, Jack, to sit down anybody, to rest them when you are in a winning streak or you are playing good ball, sends the wrong message to the team.
Okay, Mac, teams want to win, the elite teams, and they're striving for one thing before the playoffs. It's called a bye. A bye. That means they have the week off when everyone else is playing. Why do they want the week off? Because during the course of a season, and we're talking NFL first, guys are playing hurt all year long. They have some type of nagging injury. Also, the season is a mental grind. They badly need the week off to recuperate and recharge their batteries. And to keep pushing, you hit a wall. The New England Patriots were 18-0, lost to the Giants in the Super Bowl. Why did they lose to the Giants in the Super Bowl? Because the mental grind of trying to be unbeaten, this so-called momentum, they badly could have used a week off, New England, beforehand. I know there's a 2-week period before the Super Bowl, but the point is it's a mental grind. Momentum normally short term. If you keep trying to keep the momentum going over and over and over the whole season, eventually it's going to catch up to you. The Seattle Mariners in 2001. Okay, they won 116 games that year, but barely got by the Indians in the playoffs and then lost to the Yankees in 5 games. They hit a wall that this so-called momentum gets to them. Teams with the best record don't normally win the championship. Sometimes they do, but for the most part, that's not the case. The exception to the rule could be if you want home field advantage. I'll agree with you. If it means playing, if you're a warm weather team and you need to win the game to play at home, and if you lose, you might be playing at Green Bay the next week, And if that's motivation enough to win the game, even if your playoff situation, could seem pretty much set in a certain way. But you need a mental recharge in any job you're at. Resting the guys, helps them. And look at the Steelers recently. Steelers were supposed to play the Ravens on Thanksgiving. The game got moved to Sunday, to Monday, to Tuesday. By the time they played, they won that game. But the following week, they won short rest and lost.
So you just made my point for me, Jack. The Steelers, who are running away with the division and winning, get postponed.
I didn't make your point. They didn't have to rest. Had they played Thanksgiving, they would have beaten the Ravens, had off a few days. Mike Tomlin would have given them off a few days. Then they would not have lost to the Washington Redskins.
But they did not play, Jack. They did not go out there and play the game. Whether you think they rested or not, they did.
They were practicing for the
They
game.
were practicing, but they weren't hitting each other.
That's the same thing. He wasn't resting his players.
Yes, he was, Jack. They weren't hitting anybody. They were practicing. They were going through walkthroughs. They were studying film.
But the point is, the point is, you're at practice every day. You don't have to be hitting hard with the pads on. They were at practice each day. Resting the guys is just holding them back. They don't have the grind of the game going on the same way.
Exactly. So you just made my point. And a smaller point, because we're not talking playoffs. You just said that they should rest these guys. Well, the Steelers got rested. And they almost lost to a Baltimore Ravens team, playing the second, and then they lost to the Giants. I mean, sorry, not to the Giants, they lost to the Redskins. So all that rest they had, it affected the way they played.
Listen, players are always arguing in the NFL with a coach. They all have a bye week, okay? But during the bye week, some coaches make the teams practice, okay? Some coaches might give the team off 3 days, 5 days, or whatever. But I think they need that mental grind.
Right. I mean, Josh Rubin agrees with you. But let me say to you and Josh Rubin, because
Josh Rubin.
Josh Rubin. Sorry, Jack. Thank you. Sorry, Josh. The reason why I'm saying that, and the premise of the debate is, do you rest players after the playoff is wrapped up? You just said that they want to buy. So they wrap up the playoffs. What happens if they don't have that buy, Jack? I mean, do you risk?
Everyone gets to buy, Mac, during the season. I mean, that's a rule in the NFL. The buy for the playoffs. Look what happened to the New England Patriots last year. They get upset by the Miami Dolphins the last game of the season, and they miss out on the buy. So instead of them having the week off, they immediately got to play the next week against the Tennessee Titans, and they lose.
But if you
2 weeks off,
if you lost to the Miami Dolphins at that time, you don't deserve to beat the Titans, Jack. Yeah, listen, when you're going into the playoffs, Jack, and it's been shown and there have wild cards, believe it or not, that have gone to the Super Bowl and won. When you have that 1 week off or those 2 weeks off, I'm telling you, especially in football, it's all about execution. It's all about playing in that feeling. And I'm telling you right now, once you start telling the team, well, you can sit down because we have this wrapped up. And as you saw Peyton Manning going crazy trying to get in the game when they did that to him, when the Colts did that, and they did win the Super Bowl that year, Jack.
No. You're talking about with Indianapolis. They were 14-0. Peyton Manning wanted back in because he wanted to keep the unbeaten record going.
Yes.
That's an exception. That's my only one exception to the rule. If a team is unbeaten and has a chance to have a completely unbeaten season, you take the risk, you push it out. You could have a historical team. I can understand that. That was my exception to the rule when the Indianapolis head coach Jim Caldwell, when they were 14-0, pulled the starters out, meaning Peyton Manning amongst them, and just played the game. You don't tell your backup players not to win. They're still trying to win, but you're basically just resting your starters for the playoffs because you want them to be in optimum form. Someone has to play the game, Mac.
You know,
not
what,
resting the
you know
whole
what I like to know is what is the percentage of the teams that have that bye week? What is the percentage of them coming back and winning after that bye week? I'm gonna look that up for a future debate, Jack, or a future information. Because
Well, I'll tell you, Kansas City, who benefited by the bye with New England losing that last game to Miami, won the Super Bowl last year. Had Kansas City had to play an extra game, who knows what would have happened? Maybe
right,
they wouldn't have had the energy to make that late comeback against the 49ers in the Super Bowl. I mean, who knows how it would have played out? Maybe by playing the extra game, someone would have gotten injured who was going to be a factor late on for them, as it turned out. So,
I mean, it's very possible. I know there are a lot of teams, and the Giants used to be one, and I'm almost positive it was the Cowboys coming off a bye. The percentages of losing goes way down. So that's that debate. I disagree with Jack on that. I think that you've got to keep that feeling going. You got to keep everything going as far as any sport, where if you're winning, you want to keep winning, and when you start resting your players, it sends to me a wrong message. And Jack thinks you got to rest them because of the injuries.
it's a mental grind, Mac. The season is a mental grind. We just talk about it here.
Yeah.
So we could keep it going, but the guys who got to play it, start getting ready for the game, study game tape, get taped up, be in the whirlpool, dealing with injuries. It's a mental grind to do it over and over and over. They need a break from training camp to now. It's tough.
I don't know, Jack. Like I said, I don't think that's true. I think that no matter, even if you sit the players in that game, if they get hurt, I guess you put your starter in anyway. So difference of opinion, that's fine. So this is a fun one, Jack. Can you go first on that? What is the best ballpark food offered at the games?
See, I'm not like you, Mac. When I go to a ball game, I like to get there early. I like to get in the atmosphere. I like to beat the parking rush to the stadium, get my spot in the parking lot, get there comfortably early, watch the players on the field stretching, warm-ups, take the whole atmosphere into the game. You, Mac, eat a big dinner at home. Then you get there in the third inning. It's crowded. The parking lot is full, so you move to the next parking lot or whatever. And you get there in the third inning, and the score's maybe 4-1 by the time you get there. I get there in the beginning. I like to take the whole game in. So you've eaten dinner. I haven't eaten dinner yet because I'm getting there early. So I get to the ballpark. What do I want for dinner? I mean, I want to keep it simple, okay? I have two options. Either the concession guy will have my most accessible food, or I go, out into the corridor, and there's nothing like a hot dog. Listen, Louis Tiant said it best, the pitcher, okay, the Cuban pitcher. The Yankees signed him as a free agent after he left the Red Sox after the 1978 season, and they had a commercial. Louis Tiant said, "It's good to be with a wiener."
Right.
Okay,
right.
good to be with a wiener, he said.
Right. Yeah.
And that's the hot dog, Mac. The hot dog, especially you go to a Yankee game, the Yankee Franks you get. You put the condiments. Very easy to carry back to your seat. Very simple to eat. Not messy at all. You could combine the hot dogs. They'll go well with fries. And then you could get your other stuff later when you're done with your hot dogs. That's the main food. Then you could get your ice cream later, or whatever the heck you want. But the good old hot dog, let's keep it basic. You could put some mustard, sauerkraut on it. Nothing beats the hot dog for convenience, for taste. It's easy to eat. And it's the simplest dinner food. The other dinner foods, I know they're hamburgers. You could get there. There's the chicken tenders with the fries and all, and that's the pizza in the box. But the hot dog is basic. It's popular, and it fills you up enough, but you're not overdoing it. So to me, it's the hot dog.
Well, Jack, I have so many issues with what you said because there is no way that I pay that money for that ticket that I'm getting there in the fourth inning. That's for sure. I'm there right from the beginning. I'm right there from the beginning, and I'm outside.
Mac, you're yawning. You're barely making time for our production meetings for this show. Come
That's
on,
true.
I can't believe
That's
you
true.
get into the
But that's
ballpark
true.
early in the morning.
I'm not paying $300 a beer, Jack. If I'm paying $300 to be at a game, I'm there from
Mac, you're not including beer in this. You said favorite ballpark food. I could see
right,
you guzzling the beers, but I can't
right.
believe that could be an answer.
Well, Jack, me, it's the giant pretzel, Jack. I mean, have you seen the hot dogs at the ballpark? They're skinny. Most of them are overcooked. You get them, they're cold, right? It's cold and sloppy. I mean, my pick is very simple, the giant pretzel. I mean, salted already for you. All you got to do is put a little mustard on it. It's not salty. I mean, it even tastes good, even cold, Jack. The next, you could take the pretzel home with you from that as a momentum and eat it later if you want. That's how great the pretzel is. I mean, you can microwave a pretzel. You can't microwave a hot dog, Jack. I mean, the hot dogs are bad enough when you get them, and you're paying what for that hot dog? What is it, $3-4 for a skinny little hot dog that's mostly bread, and you get a little package of ketchup. I don't know. The pretzel has a long shelf life, as I said. I mean, it lasts forever. I mean, it's great. I mean, have you really eaten a hot dog lately at the ballpark, Jack? Have you really within the last 20 years, Jack, because you're an old time guy here, in the last 20 years, have you ever eaten a hot dog now? I mean,
yeah, I've gotten hot dogs, but I'm saying, you get your vendors. They're
right.
not saying get your pretzels, get your hot jumbo pretzels with mustard. You don't hear that.
Because
you hear them go hot dogs here, hot dogs.
They don't have to push and sell these things, Jack.
You got to get on the long line for your pretzels.
Everybody knows that the pretzels are the best. They don't have to suggest to sell the pretzel, Jack. The pretzel is the perfect ballpark food. And you want to know why too, Jack? Because the hot dog is sloppy. I mean, you go to make a move or something, you can't share a hot dog with anybody. I mean, you go to pass the hot dog, there goes the sauerkraut, there goes everything. I mean, it falls off. You're eating it, it's all over your face. I mean, it falls down your shirt. I mean, when you have a
Mac, I don't know who's that sloppy, but my hot dog doesn't fall down my shirt. Sauerkraut.
Listen. The pretzel you can hold in your hand. There's no movement. It's not moving around. It's right there in your hand, and you can eat it. And Jack, as you know, I know you're a big net supporter around the size of the baseball parks. I'm not, by the way. I think everybody should have like a helmet they gotta wear or something. But I mean, listen, when that baseball gets hit to you, Jack, and you got a hot dog, what happens? I mean, you can't do nothing with the hot dog. It might hit the hot dog.
What do you use, a pretzel as a shield?
I mean, you can hold the pretzel in one hand without worrying about falling to the ground, and you can make a catch. So I mean,
that would be great, Mac. With all the mustard that you have on the pretzel, you're trying a one-handed catch and holding the pretzel like that.
Yes, it's perfect. The pretzel in one hand, the glove in the other. You got it, and it's even easier to drink beer while you're eating a pretzel.
See, Mac, where I sit normally, I sit with the real fans. We don't get too many foul balls, hit our area. We're kind of far up in the stands.
Right. And
it's a lot of rows to walk down to concessions, so it's so great to have the vendors come by with the hot dogs. But I got to admit, I have a confession. I love those salty pretzels with mustard. They've been a favorite of mine from childhood. So, I mean, I absolutely love them. But I'm talking convenience here, getting the hot dog.
Yes.
If all factors are equal and you show me a salty pretzel with mustard next to a hot dog, I mean, chances are I'm going to grab the salty pretzel. I got to be honest about it. But for convenience sake, okay? Yes. The best ballpark food, and if you haven't eaten dinner, you figure you're going to get a hot dog or a hamburger, chicken tenders, one of the three. Yeah. The salty pretzel's not going to be your main thing.
Yes.
Okay? It's going to be like an extra on top of it.
That's
very if you've eaten early and you're not getting a heavy meal, you're not getting dinner there, then the salty pretzel, to me, would move ahead of the hot dog. But if you get to the ballpark early, you got to pick something up for dinner. The hot dog's normally the easiest thing. You get a hot dog and fries or whatever.
Yeah.
2 hot dogs, and that'll normally do it.
I'll admit too, Jack, I do buy a hot dog when I'm there. So the next debate, Jack, is do you sit Carson Wentz for the rest of the season? And I'm going to tell you, Jack, no matter how he continues to play, it's a definite no for me, and there's a couple reasons for that. First, the contract. I mean, you paid this man to be your franchise quarterback, and to sit him does him no good, except for maybe one game, maybe 2 games. But for the rest of the season, I don't think you do that because, you paid the man to do it, and you got to send him a message. Yeah, you're not playing too well. But to sit him for the rest of the season, I think would be even worse, where you're telling not only that he's playing terribly, but you have lost total faith in him. And that, if you do try to maybe move him after the season with that big contract, it wouldn't help you that way either. I mean, the guy is so bad that you're taking, this quarterback you drafted that has no NFL experience, and you're going to play him for the rest of the season. And what happens if Hurts doesn't play well? You take Hurts out and put Wentz back in. I mean, listen, I believe, Jack, that Hurts is going to be the quarterback of the future in the Eagles. I really believe that. I don't think Wentz I've had doubts about Wentz since he started there. I don't care if he played well for 11 games or not. But it's lose-lose for the Eagles, Jack. I mean, if you play Hurts and he plays, say he makes it closer than Wentz did, you're still losing the game. And if you want to see what this kid does, what are you going to do with Wentz when the next year comes around? Are you going to make an open competition? It's still the same position you're in right now. I don't think you'll be able to get rid of Wentz. And what are you going to tell Hurst if he does play better than Wentz? Well, we paid him more, so you got to sit. I think it's giving this kid false hope. I think you play Wentz for the next year, finish the year out, let him do what he does, and then you got a big decision to make yet, Jack. I'm not saying don't sit Wentz at all. I'm not for that. I think they should send Wentz to send him a message. I think the head coach and the GM may be out of a job next year. That's how bad it's gotten in Philadelphia right now. So I don't know, Jack. I think that to sit him for the rest of the season is not going to do the Eagles or Wentz any good.
Well, for the Philadelphia Eagles, the math is simple. If the Giants or the Redskins, either one of them, go 3-1 the rest of the way in their 4 games, Eagles are mathematically eliminated. But let's say the Redskins and the Giants each go 2-2. Let's say they each go 2-2, which is a realistic expectations. At least one of them is going to go 2-2. And let's say it stops there. The Eagles have to win their remaining 4 games to win the division. 3-1 won't do it for the Eagles. And the way they're playing, let's face it, Mac, they're not going 4-0. Even the most optimistic Eagle fan isn't thinking they could possibly go 4-0. Jalen Hurts was drafted in the 2nd round of the draft. You do not draft a guy in the 2nd round of the draft unless he has a future with the team. At some point, he's got to play. And they can't keep using him on these nonsensical package plays. That's got to stop.
I agree with that.
We've got to see what Jalen Hurts has. He's got to get experience at some point. Once again, you draft a guy number 2 in the draft. What are you going to do with him? And Carson Wentz is relatively young. It's not like a veteran quarterback situation like Aaron Rodgers, where the Packers moved up, they drafted Jordan Love. I think that was a mistake, but they were high on Jordan Love. And they're thinking, well, maybe Aaron Rodgers has 3 years left. We have his heir apparent in Jordan Love. Such couldn't have been the Eagles thinking with Carson Wentz, who's much younger than Rodgers. And so they got Jalen Hurts knowing that this day might arrive. Carson Wentz has been under extreme pressure. You don't think the criticism wears on him every single week. Sitting down now is going to take the pressure off him. People aren't going to be saying, well, should the Eagles make a change? Because they've made a change, okay? And now we see what Jalen Hurts has going for him. It's win-win in a sense for the Eagles if they really want Carson Wentz to be that guy. Because if Jalen Hurts plays well, they've resolved their quarterback situation, at least for now, and they could move forward with Jalen Hurts. If Jalen Hurts doesn't play well, they can easily go back to Carson Wentz later on. And the Eagle fans, too, they're restless. they need a change from all this talk. Carson Wentz can regroup, go to training camp next year, battle Jalen Hurts for the starting job. If Jalen Hurts has played well, and you think he could be their quarterback going forward as well. And let me tell you something. This year, don't give up on it. It's possible Jalen Hurts gets injured and Carson Wentz gets in the lineup. Or if Jalen Hurts is struggling badly, they could bring Carson Wentz back. No one says they can't. And Carson Wentz won't be looking over his shoulder in the meantime. And last but not least, Carson Wentz could, on his, he can reflect, okay? Maturity wise.
Yeah, Jack. First of all, with Carson Wentz, he has too big of a contract to say, well, okay, you won't be our quarterback going forward. And the reason why they drafted Hurts so high was because of his injuries. That's what happened with Foles. He's been injured, I think, twice. He's had to come out in the last couple of years. So that's one of the reasons why they drafted a quarterback so high. I agree that they got to see what Hurts got, but what does it have? So, like I said, Hurts plays well, say the Eagles don't win all their games, but he plays well. Are you going to get rid of Carson Wentz with that big contract? And how? How are you going to pay a quarterback that amount of money and have him as a second string quarterback? And that's the problem the Bears have right now.
Okay, well, is he the second string quarterback for now? They're not looking at that way. They're making a switch off. And this is for the last 4 games, basically. The Eagles are pretty much out of it. These are for the last 4 games.
Okay. I just think that, if Hurst plays good then and doesn't win, do you stick with him next year? There's a quarterback competition when you got a guy making $40-something million a year. I don't know, Jack. I think they're just in a terrible position right now. So what we're going to do is we're going to take our last break for today. We'll be right back, folks, on the other side. And we got a few more debates and maybe even who's better will be up. So stick around, guys, and we'll be right back.
If you served honorably in our nation's armed forces and you're looking for a way to continue serving your fellow veterans in your community, then join AMVETS. Each year, AMVETS members volunteer millions of hours at VA healthcare facilities from coast to coast, helping to improve the lives of their fellow veterans through the VA Voluntary Services Program. AMVETS posts and departments also participate in a wide variety of community service projects, ranging from Americanism in our schools to supporting the Special Olympics and Boy Scouts of America. If you no longer wear the uniform today, you can still serve through the AMVETS by joining today at amvets.org.
We all make choices. When it comes to alcohol, kids make choices whether to drink or not.
Bye-bye.
Remember, I'm going to Alex's party tonight and sleeping over.
Hey, have a seat for a second. Remind me about that party again.
And adults make choices whether to talk about it. That's true of parents and every other trusted adult in a kid's life. Kids want to know our expectations when it comes to alcohol and other drugs. They want guidance and honest answers to their questions. And it makes a difference when the message is consistent and part of everyday conversations. So talk with your kids and help lead them on a positive path. Because when you talk, they hear you. For more information about talking with your kids about underage use of alcohol and other drugs, visit underagedrinking.samhsa.gov.
When you hear the word asthma, you probably think of shortness of breath, coughing, or inhalers. Lots of things can trigger asthma, but the fact is that asthma doesn't just attack, it can kill. But with proper medical management, asthma is controllable. If you experience shortness of breath, wheezing, tightness in your chest, or persistent nighttime coughing, you may have asthma. See your doctor and get the facts. You'll breathe easier. For more information, call 211-INFO-LINE. A message from the Connecticut Department of Public Health, keeping Connecticut healthy.
If you talk and they will hear you every single time.
Oh, we're getting killed. Yeah, well, Kyle's not here.
How come?
Kicked off the team. Didn't Tim tell you? Kyle and some other kids got caught drinking beer in the park a couple of nights ago.
Really?
Yeah. 0 tolerance. He's out for the season.
Come on, it's a first offense, right?
That we know of. But why should that matter? He knew not to drink. I made it clear to Matt, that's what we expect from him. What have you said to Tim?
Nothing really. You know, a lot of kids try it at this age, so.
Yeah, well, a lot of kids don't try it too. I'm not saying that Matt's going to be this perfect kid, but if I don't tell him what we expect and why he shouldn't drink, how's he going to know?
You think kids that age really listen?
They never admit it, Bill, but they hear more than you think.
Talk. They hear you. For more information about talking with kids about underage drinking, visit underagedrinking.samhsa.gov.
Oh, last night. Oh, yeah.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome back to the Mac and Jack Sports Show. I'm your host, Mac, with your co-host, Jack Hirsch. We're on every Wednesday through Sunday from 8 to 10 a.m. And as I showed on the banner, Jack, we do have a Christmas show coming up pretty soon. We are getting ready for that, as everybody knows that I think Christmas is on a Thursday this year. I'm not exactly sure, but we will be on air then. At least I will be. I don't know what you're doing, Jack, for Christmas, but I know Christmas Eve I got to work, believe it or not, at my other job, but that goes
You work Christmas Eve, Mac?
Yes, sir.
Wow.
It goes along with, on with the business that I'm in. Where everybody's off, I'm working. So,
well, I'll be thinking of you.
Thank you very much. Hopefully, I'm not there too late. I'd like to go over some of the comments we had that from the comments from the people viewing the show. Our friend over there, Keith Angle,
Wentz the Pats.
To the Pats. So there you go. Maybe that will happen.
That might work. Would the Pats really take on that contract? I don't think it would happen. I think the contract is a big stumbling block, even if they like Wentz. We have no clue whether or not Belichick, Josh McDaniel would like Wentz.
It's a thought.
It's a thought, yeah. I think the way Wentz gets traded, one big contract for another, him for Mitch Trubisky might make a little more sense.
Yeah, I agree with that. We also got Josh Rubin, who was very involved in the show today. He still thinks that was a terrible coverage, but that, the cornerback shouldn't have been on that juke in the middle of the field, and he's right to a point.
He's right, because during the time we play for fun, two-hand touch, and it's last down, and it's a touchdown and nothing. We know never to let the receiver get behind us. We always knew that. Always, if he's going to catch the ball, it's going to be in front of us, but it's not going to be behind us.
Yes, he also said the Hail Mary could turn around the Jets if they land Trevor Lawrence. I still think.
I said that all along, Mac, but you don't care. You want to keep both Trevor Lawrence and Sam Darnold together.
I do.
If Darnold maybe beat him out for the starting job, and if Darnold beats him out, you'd keep Trevor Lawrence on the bench a few years.
Well,
that's how you use the number one overall pick.
Tell me if this makes sense. At least Darnold has a few years of experience under his belt, like they sort of did with Kurt Warner. Not that I'm comparing Sam Darnold to Kurt Warner in any means, but, you have an experienced quarterback there that could be there for Trevor Lawrence, and he could hand off the baton to Lawrence if Lawrence does outplay him in the first couple of years. I still think that coaching has a lot more to do with it than a starting quarterback. So we'll see what happens then. He also said Darnold to the Bears, Jack. So, again, Josh Rubin was really involved today in our show, which thank you, Josh.
He knows his stuff. He knows his stuff.
Very, very good points he made. And, of course, he agreed with you, which I don't like, but that's okay.
Yeah, well, listen, he better.
Anyway, so let's do a couple other things before we push on with the debate too, Jack. We got three sponsors all together so far. A couple more in the works. We got the Fanatics. Just go to our website. They got all the your team's apparel in all sports: baseball, football, basketball, hockey. Their store is tremendous. Just check them out by clicking on the link right there at macandjacksports.com. At our website, brings you right to their store. BST Sports, another place that has great signed jerseys, all kinds of different sports cards. These are great gifts. Both of these places where you can go and click on and get Christmas gifts sent to you through the mail instead of going out there and trying to find this stuff. And especially if you got some sports people, and everybody has sports people in their family. And if you do want to go ahead and get on board and sponsor our show, just send me an email at macman121062 at yahoo.com. We got great rates for people out there that want to get their word out there, their products and their services. So we're available. And like I said, we got 2 more maybe coming on board, Jack. I'm going through the final things with that. So that's the business out of the way, Jack. Let's get back to the debate. The next debate question we have is, should refs get suspended, possibly fined for outrageous bad calls? And I'm not talking about like a holding penalty. I'm talking about a call like happened with, what happened with the Saints, where the wide receiver was actually hit before the ball got there. They didn't call it, and could have changed the result of the game. So we're talking about things like that. Maybe an umpire, maybe a basketball ref calling a foul that's not a foul. We all know it's not a foul. We're not talking about double dribble, which is no longer a call in the NBA. We're talking about serious fouls and serious things that change the course of the game. And Jack, what do you think about that?
Oh, absolutely. Referees should be held accountable the same way players are. If players don't perform, they don't play. And if they continue not to perform, eventually they get cut from the team. They can't be in the league anymore. The same things with refs. I don't understand baseball. They have their rotating basis. One game a player is going to be behind the plate, then he'll be at third base, at first base. Have the best umpire/officials work the games. They use this rotating basis in boxing. You get so many bad decisions from so many judges. I want to see a pool of boxing judges, for example, work all the big fights. Get your best people in there the whole time. And surveys from players should be considered meaningful. If players constantly answer a survey that certain umpires/officials are the worst in the league, those guys shouldn't keep working the whole time. And replays have been bailing out umpires in sports since it's come into effect. But that shouldn't be the case, because these replays are holding the games up. They're making them longer than it should be. And I'm for eliminating all these rotating assignments. I mean, and referees too get a little too personal. They start arguing with players. They have an attitude, well, I'm the boss. What I say is the law. How dare you question what I do? And how many times, Mac, have we seen an umpire kind of follow a player, kind of antagonize him a little bit too? How many times have you heard umpires look into a dugout and start arguing, and they kick a guy out who maybe wasn't even hardly arguing with them?
Yeah.
I mean, they have too short a fuse. They've got to be held to a high standard. And if an umpire, look, anyone can make a mistake once in a while. Look, Jim Joyce made a mistake on this Galaga. Oh, man, I'm having a brain cramp. He took away the perfect game by a bad call. He called the runner safe at first when the runner was out. Jim Joyce was very contrite. He apologized to the pitcher. A lot of class. He came into the locker room and he said he was sorry. And he was absolutely crushed by his bad call. No one felt worse than he did. And this is an umpire who was rated always very highly by the players as one of the best umpires in baseball. I give a guy like that a pass, okay? Yeah. Who normally calls a great game. But for the umpires who constantly, you were talking about the strike zone, having a nightmare game behind home plate, they've got to be sent down to the minors to straighten out. And if they can't get straightened out there, they've got to be out of the game.
I mean, I agree with you to a point. I mean, I do think they should be held accountable. I think instant replay has maybe made it worse. I mean, we've always had the human element in there, and the human element was part of the game. Now that we got the replay, which is interesting to me because you disagree with the virtual strike zone, but you should think the umpires and the refs should be held accountable. Listen, Jack, I believe that for one thing, I do see where umpires get more personal than they should following players, but we don't know what the player said to him. I mean, we don't know really. You don't hear what he said to the umpire. I do think that there's got to be some kind of authority that they have to listen to. Otherwise, you go back to the days when Babe Ruth punched the umpire in the mouth. When he made a bad call.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you do have to have that authority there, unless you're going to do what they do in tennis and make it virtual and make it correct all the time. And they could do that with all the cameras they have on the sidelines. You could pretty much, and all the video they have, you could call penalties from the booth if you really wanted to. I mean, if you really wanted to go that far. But again, that takes away to me from the game, the tradition of the game. And should they be held accountable? I think to a point. I think if they're that bad, and remember, there are unions that are involved there, so firing somebody and punishing somebody takes a lot longer and a lot more than you think. I do agree with you where they should have, listen to the surveys and listen to the problems. How many times has the NFL called and apologized to a team and said, yeah, we got the call wrong? And that does nothing for the team. I mean, they lost anyway. So, I mean, I do agree with you to a point. But if you're going to do it to me, Jack, you go all the way or don't do it at all.
Listen, Mac, Alex Smith in that game when Washington upset Pittsburgh right before the half to save time, he pulled a magnificent play, a veteran's play. He ran off with the football to the sideline, and the officials got confused.
Right.
And they gave the Redskins extra time to kick a field goal, which possibly changed the outcome of the game. Possibly.
I agree.
And the idea, how could they get duped by Alex Smith? He fooled the officials. They have to be held accountable.
I do agree, but what do they do? How do you hold them accountable for that, Jack? First of all,
sharper.
Shouldn't you hold Alex Smith accountable for that too? I mean, if you're going to say
that's like a player.
Isn't that delay of game, Jack? Right? I mean, that they could have called delay of game,
but they didn't. They let Alex Smith get away with it. And
I agree, but do you think that because he did that on purpose, he affected the outcome of the game? And maybe everybody's saying, "Oh, that was a great play." But was it? Was it really a great play? So, I mean, I understand what you're saying. I do agree with you to a point, but I believe that either you keep the human element out, or you keep it totally out, or keep it. And to me, I think that the refs and umps in a lot of cases, Jack, they get the short end of the stick when things are happening very fast in front of them. And, if you're on the field, it's a lot different than you're watching a video in slow motion. So I do agree with you to a point, and I don't totally disagree with you on that. So we already talked about the virtual strike zone, which was going to be next on the list. So the last thing that we have, Jack, and this is up your alley, and I do normally I do take your opinions and your thoughts on this very seriously, because this is what you get paid for. So the greatest boxing match in history. I mean, it doesn't have to be heavyweight. It could be any match there is. And this is who I'm going to go with, Jack. It's going to be the Hagler-Hearns fight. You had the greatest, probably middleweight of all time, fight against the hitman Tommy Hearns, which was, to me, I mean, a lot of people think he's maybe a little lower than Sugar Ray Leonard. I don't think that. I think Hagler is one of the greatest boxers of all time. When you watch that match from the opening bell to when it was over, it was totally action-packed. And that's what I look for in a fight, Jack. I look at two tremendous fighters going at it, not holding back, going out and using all their skills to try to defeat the other person. It's a good thing Hagler had a strong chin, because he took a lot of good shots. And I'll tell you right now, Hagler was outstanding in that fight too. It was total action, two proud fighters, not backing down. Both very skilled, and both, I mean, from the opening round, Jack, I thought somebody was going down. I mean, they were going at it so heavy and hard right away. And you have to take the fighters into consideration here. Like I said, Hagler, one of the greatest middleweights, if not the greatest middleweights of all time, and Tommy Hearns, a multiple champion who fought everyone, including Sugar Ray Leonard, including some of the greatest fighters in the welterweight and middleweight division. And if he didn't beat him, he was right there with him at the end. So that's my greatest fight of all time, Jack. And I'm interested to hear yours.
Well, if we talk about events, only events, the first Ali Frazier fight is easily the greatest fight in boxing history. I mean, the only two fights that would compare to it would be the rematch with Joe Louis and Max Schmeling, but that only lasted one round. Or the Jack Johnson-Jim Jeffries fight in 1910, the Great White Hope fight. It lasted 15 rounds, but it was one-sided. But if we're talking about an important fight for action that took place, we have to take that fact into consideration. So I'm going to eliminate the first Ali Frazier fight. It was an excellent fight inside the ring. Excellent action. For importance, nothing matched it. So, and I'm also going to give an honorable mention to a fight I saw in Las Vegas at the Mandalay Bay in 2005 with Diego Corrales against Jose Luis Castillo for the lightweight championship of the world. After that fight, Max Kellerman came up to me at ringside and said that was the greatest fight in boxing history, if you consider the importance. But if we really want to look at the greatest fight in boxing history, we got to look at the Thrill in Manila, Muhammad Ali and Joe Frazier. That was 14 brutal rounds, non-stop action the whole way. Ali put a beating on Frazier the first few rounds. Then Frazier came on, put a beating on Ali in the middle rounds. At the end of 12 rounds, the fight was up for grabs. Ali rallied in the 13th and 14th. Frazier was forced to retire on the stool by his trainer, Eddie Futch. And Frazier was pleading to come out for the 15th round in the scorching heat of Manila. Ali told his corner, cut the gloves off, I've had it. But it was more out of being delirious, because Ali wouldn't have quit it. He would have came out for the 15th one way or the other. Never step in another fight like that. Just think of the nicknames of all the fights. The Thriller in Manila. We still love the nickname, the Thriller in Manila. Listen, Ali Frazier fought 3 times. Their third fight was the best for pure action. Listen, their daughters even fought. And I was at the fight when their daughters fought at the Turning Stone Casino. And you could argue their daughters' fight had more action than their dads. That's how great it was. Listen, Hagler Hearns' great fight, bottom line, lasted 3 rounds as opposed to 14 rounds. So if you look at how the length of the fight, I've got to go with the Thriller in Manila for pure action and nothing else.
You know, the only reason why I kind of disagree with that was because Frazier didn't come out in the last round.
Wasn't allowed to come out.
It's true.
Listen, he at least lasted through the 14th round. The hitman Tommy Hearns couldn't last.
True, very true. But them 3 rounds to me was a 15-round fight in 3 of them. But I mean, I would have chose Jack honestly with Frazier and Ali. I would have went with the second one probably over both of them. I thought that was the closest fight it was.
But not pure action. The second fight was a good, entertaining fight, but not a great fight. If we want to talk about short, explosive fights, I have a better fight for you than Hagler and Hearns. Okay. Jack Dempsey against Louis Angel Firpo.
Good choice.
First round of that fight, Firpo knocks Dempsey to a knee. Then Dempsey knocks Firpo down 7 times in the first round. But the round ends. Firpo knocks Dempsey out of the ring.
Right.
Out of the ring. They have that famous picture. The people at ringside have to push Dempsey back. Not that Dempsey asked him. He shouldn't have gotten disqualified. He didn't ask for any aid.
Right.
He gets back in the ring, and then he knocks Firpo out in the next round. Dempsey doesn't even remember getting knocked out of the ring. Imagine that. knocking a guy down 7 times, and you're knocked out of the ring and your feet are like kicking up in the air.
Yeah.
Wow, I mean, what a fight.
That's great. That's a great remembrance. I remember watching the film.
1923
That
at the Polo
was,
Grounds.
Yeah, that was unbelievable. So, Jack, that's it for the debate, but we do have a great segment that we do with you, and it's who's better. And I'll ask you different players, sometimes from different eras, sometimes in the same era, who you think was better as a player. So let's start off with a hometown favorite of mine, Phil Simms or Roger Staubach, Jack.
Roger Staubach. I mean, Phil Simms was a wonderful quarterback, okay? He was a little more of a game manager. I like Roger Staubach, but more flexible. Roger Staubach was better running out of the pocket. Phil Simms, even though he had mobility, was essentially a pocket passer. He was like a perfect guy for the Giants to have. But there were, if you talk about pure greatness, Roger Staubach was a great quarterback. Phil Simms was a very good quarterback. And when you look what Phil Simms has done as a broadcaster, combining it with his NFL career, I think Phil Simms should get in the Hall of Fame someday. I hope he does. I would vote for him if you look at body of work. But as far as Roger Staubach being a Hall of Famer, it's a no-brainer. Roger Staubach was the one who termed the phrase Hail Mary. His pass to Drew Pearson against the Vikings was the original Hail Mary, and that's become a part of American culture now in sports.
Definitely. Okay, Jack, here you might not think it's tough. I do. Your hometown hero, Joe Namath or Darryl LaMonica?
Listen, I mean, if you take away the charisma and all the glamour, you could make an argument for LaMonica. But when they played together, I'm just going back. They played together at their peak. And you would ask the players, Joe Willie Namath was the guy. For that short window when Joe Namath was on top, he was considered the best quarterback in the league. It wasn't Darryl LaMonica.
Right.
Darryl LaMonica was wonderfully consistent and so on. But yeah, but you have to go with Joe Willie Namath when he was at his very best. Yeah.
Okay. Robert De Niro or Al Pacino, Jack? Who's better?
I'll go with Robert De Niro. I mean, Robert De Niro, he's worked so many different roles, and especially you look at sports. How can you not be partial to a guy who played Jake LaMotta in The Raging Bull? I actually had dinner one night, Mac, with the actual Jake LaMotta himself.
Okay.
And that was an experience. There were 6 of us, and Mike McCallum, who was a great junior middleweight champion in middleweight, a Hall of Famer. He was at the table with me coincidentally. We were together through the niceness of Bob Duffy, who was the New York State Hall of Fame boxing president. And Jake LaMotta's wife was half his age. And when it was at the Waterfront Crab House, and when Jake LaMotta was taken by Bob Duffy to look at the memorabilia they had at the clubhouse, and all of a sudden, Jake LaMotta's wife grabbed McCallum and took him onto the dance floor. And McCallum was nervous. He didn't want to beat him because he watched Raging Bull. He knew Jake LaMotta's temper. So then Jake LaMotta comes back and he sees the tail end of it and he glares at his wife. Okay? It wasn't Vicky. It was his new wife.
Right.
And Mike McCallum sitting next to me, he's still very nervous. And I whispered to him, I go, relax, Mike. He's close to 90 years old. And then McCallum whispers back to me saying, yeah, but he could still kick both our butts.
Yes.
Okay? No, I love it.
So Jack, Alex Smith or Andy Dalton? I think it's an interesting question.
No, Alex Smith. Okay. Alex Smith is just better. Andy Dalton was good with the Bengals. I mean, he was worth their second-round pick as opposed to Alex Smith being taken in the draft first overall. Alex Smith won with the 49ers. He won with the Chiefs. The problem is they had someone a little better to come in. Colin Kaepernick had a little more upside at the time. And, of course, there was Patrick Mahomes. Any player who's played with Alex Smith hated it when he was sat down for the other guys because he did such a good job. He was a consummate pro. Look what he's doing with Washington, coming back off that injury. And he's overtaken Kyle Allen and Dwayne Haskins to be their starting quarterback next year.
A real quick one for you, Jack, since you brought it up. We got like 30 seconds left.
I'll make it quick.
The Rocky movie or the Raging Bull movie?
Rocky 1 to me was the ultimate movie.
Okay,
Rocky 1.
So tomorrow, Jack, we have some interesting stuff going on. We got our football show, and it should be a lot of fun. We have our fantasy football guy, Anthony Serino, will be coming in, breaking down some games with us. We also got the host of Sports Scope, Robert Butler, coming in. So, folks, if you're up, come on and join us live as we do our preview to the Sunday's football game, Super Bowl eventually. So, you guys have a great day. Have a great Saturday. We'll see you tomorrow. And join us tomorrow from 8 to 10. Thank you.